And the same thing happens with us. Like, listen, these basement level moments matter because they impact the structural integrity of your entire life.
Hey friends, and welcome back to the Show Up season of the Mary Marantz Show, a season where we will just keep on reminding you that we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up. To let this be the year when you finally show up and get moving on all those things you can't go a day without thinking about. And in today's episode, we are really going to zero in on this idea of showing up and planting small seeds over and over again, long before you ever start to see any real growth or results. And to do that, I could not be more honored than to be joined by my new friend, podcaster and author of the brand new book, How'd I Miss That? Gas Pump Confessions, Drive-Through Obsessions, and Figuring Out What Really Matters, Cynthia Yanof, as we talk about how to stop building for applause and start building for eternity. Cynthia, welcome to the show. And did I get that last name right? Let's just clarify that right from the beginning.
Oh my gosh, you totally got it right. And you know
Amazing.
what? When you have that kind of last name, you go by anything. But yeah, you nailed it.
Nice. Well, I'm Marantz like dance, in case you're wondering, and now we've been properly introduced.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time. I know how busy it is with book launches ramping up. The book comes out as we're recording just a couple weeks from now. When the episode comes out, it'll be 1 week from now. And so I know that these days are packed and scheduled. So we're so thankful you're taking the time. We have something in common I have found from reading your book right off the bat. And that is that, I'll set up the story this way. You say in the book, I'm reminded of a time when Jesus was talking about loving our neighbors and a lawyer asked him to define exactly what constitutes a neighbor. And you say that is such a lawyer thing to ask. And so we both went to law school and then did not spend much of our lives becoming lawyers and instead became authors and podcasters. I didn't practice at all. You did practice for a few years. But maybe just talk for a little bit about that transition of going really all in down one path only to Ross Geller style pivot to where your heart was really being called.
Well, I love that we have that in common because then we can make fun of lawyers. And if you are one, you're allowed to do it. It doesn't seem as disrespectful. And I'm married to a lawyer. It's like a double whammy over here. Yeah. And then Mary, brace yourself. My oldest is going to law school.
I'm like, I saw
are we kidding? Everyone, please stop with the nonsense. Yes, I did. I went to law school and I'm just going to shoot straight with y'all. I didn't know what a lawyer did. And so I based it on like Ally McBeal. Some of you are too young to know what I'm talking about, but like think Suits. Like I thought I was going to work with like Harvey Specter and I was going to wear pencil skirts and stiletto heels and have all these awesome fabulous new lawyer friends and we were going to go to happy hours and I don't even drink, but I was like, let's do that. And so I went to law school and I did meet my husband, which is amazing, all worth it. However, I got into the law firm one day and I realized something that nobody told me. And that is, I'm going to save y'all some time if you're thinking about law school. Lawyers in law firms care about the law. I did not. And so my dreams, my hopes and dreams and aspirations of pencil skirts and all the things, they really, it was not meant to be. It was more of casual corner, like with the, what are they called? Pads, shoulder pads, all that. Like it was a real sad situation.
Yeah, I love that. And I super know what you mean about like feeling sort of like out of place. Like, oh, you guys actually really care about code 76.21 and
like, and
doing
why?
an entire find and replace of a 300-page document, changing the name to the initials and then back to the full name, which is what I spent my summer doing.
Right.
At a law firm.
Can I say one thing though, Mary, that I will want to encourage you is that I learned that a deposition, and believe you me, I took 1 billion depositions in the 7 years I was a lawyer. That's what a podcast is. I mean, all you do is you ask questions, you listen, you ask a few more questions. So literally it was kind of an expensive degree to get for a podcaster, but nonetheless it was training. So there's that.
I always say none of it will be wasted. None of it.
Truly.
None of it. Okay, well, building off of our conversation about, lawyers and law schools and all of that, I am just going to need you to unpack in your own words in real time this contract's final exam story, because I have to tell you that I have literally, and I know how you feel about the word literally, so I'm using that correctly.
Yes, you are.
I've literally had that stress dream for 20 years, like including like one a week ago. I
Oh, the law
continue
school dream. Yeah.
to have this dream. So what happened with this contract's final
Okay.
exam?
Well, yeah, like normal people dream that they're like falling or maybe that like their teeth fell out. Not us, man. We're going to dream the law school final exam dream. And so in law school, and I don't know, I can only speak for Texas and the law school I went to, but I was a pretty good student when I went to law school. I was ready. And it was the first time I took contracts. And it was the first time that I had taken a class where the entire class was just one grade. It was the final exam. Did they do it
Yeah.
that way for you, Mary?
Some of the classes did for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
So I mean, I was a good student, so I did the things, and I studied and I joined the little groups and I did all the things, and so the final exam comes around, and I get the paper, and everyone now brace yourselves. We used pencils back when I was in law school. Okay.
And blue books.
Yes, and blue books, thank you. So I read the legal scenario and there was 2 questions and it was essay. And I'm like, got it, like nailed it. So I start scribbling it out and I turn it in and I go to check my grade a few weeks later and it's posted on the front doors of the law school by your little student number. Actually, I'm not even kidding. I think it was by the social security number, like the last 4 digits back in the day. That's really
Whoa.
throwing all caution to the wind at the law schools. So I see it and it says F and I laugh out loud, you guys, because I mean, I'm a good student. I don't get Fs. And I read it again and I'm like, oh no, it's still an F. And so I run over to the professor's office who also doesn't know who got the F because it's graded anonymously. And the professor is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's you. And you literally, Cynthia, like you came to class, you studied, you participated like you knew it. And he's like, but here's the deal. When you read the question, you must have read it wrong because
Oh.
you answered a question we weren't asking. I know, like
Mm.
I want to die a little right now telling you this again. And so he said, I don't know if you feel better or not, but if that was what we asked, that was an A response. And I was like, no,
Wow.
I don't feel better. Thank you. And so I always I kind of talk about it in my book this way. I kind of liken it to faith, which is kind of all I know is still liken real life to faith, but I kind of say it this way. Um, when it comes to living as a Christian, which I am a strong believer, and faith kind of dictates how I do life. But I think about this a lot that as Christians, like our brand is love, right? Like if Nike is just do it and Subway is eat fresh, like as Christians, like our brand is love. That's the greatest commandment. Love God, love your neighbor. And I think about all the times that we are walking in this world and culture is asking us questions about our faith, about our God. They're asking questions about themselves. Am I good enough? Like, can I be loved? And I think as Christians, if we are answering the questions of our culture with anything other than love, then we've misunderstood the question. And so I
Mm.
kind of go back to that in law school. Now, was it worth me getting an F to have this faith point? Probably not. But I kind of go back to that. Like, I went to class, I joined the study group, I can do all the things. And as a Christian, I can go to church and I can read the Bible through the year and I can do all the things. But every day I have one chance encounters with people to show them what my faith is about, what our God is about. And these one chance encounters show up with kind of annoying people a lot of times in really like moments where it's inconvenient. And it shows up with maybe the jerky boss at work or the clerk that's impatient with you at the store, whatever. But if we have these one chance encounters to show what we're about, like we have to be about love. And if we're not, then we kind of missed it. And so, yeah, that's the law school story. That's the little piece of me that died when I failed contracts and had to take it twice. And yeah, there you go. That should have been.
Wow, he didn't even let you, like, write it like,
No,
have a do-over.
no,
Wow.
I took the class again, Mary, and it was on my GPA. And I'll have y'all know, I got a good job out of law school, and I have no idea why. Because you try to pull a GPA out of an F. I mean, the rest, I guess I get all A's after that, but good gravy. So there you go.
Wow. Wow, and I feel like I saw in the book, maybe in, like, the recap at the end of that chapter, that the professor wrote on it something like, "All knowledge, no execution," and I was just like, "Ooh," like, that is so many of us. In my book, Underestimated, which is, like, that was our last season last year, and this sort of, like, the spinoff of it, I had a whole chapter, titled to or dedicated to this idea of overthinking, right? Like we just we have it all up here. We know what we need to do, but we're not actually moving on it. And so that is like a punch to the gut and a stress dream come to life, but it does all work out. You do still get to where it is you're meant to be, and you do it with this lesson of we have to do it with love, and these small things add up. Like
Mm.
ultimately, like these small decisions we're making every day
Mhm.
become who we are, which takes me right into my next question, which is about love and who it might help. So, spoiler alert for those of you who have not read Underestimated, that the book sort of wraps up in the final chapter, in chapter 14, showing this diagram that we use a lot as entrepreneurs. I had law firm offers in London and New York. I turned them down to become a full-time photographer with my husband Justin, and then we went on to have like courses for photographers. And now I've been doing author and podcaster for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And so in the entrepreneur world, we have this thing that's called the survival to significance hierarchy.
Mm.
Sort of like how it's sort of a pulse of like how you're doing in your business. Like, are you barely surviving? You're just barely getting
Mhm.
started. You start to get a little bit of breathing room. You have a little bit of stability. You move into security. You move into people calling you a success. And then if you're in it long enough, was my assumption, if you stay with it long enough, you will inevitably become someone of significance. And I, as someone who felt overlooked my whole life growing up, could not wait to get to a place of significance. But then I had this sort of like, aha moment, this vision that kind of slid through my brain like a slide reel projector, advancing. There's actually a gap between the last two steps. There's a gap, a speed worthy, it's finished on the map gap. We're going to speed up, and make the leap. That's a Keanu Reeves movie, if you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
sure
totally.
where I'm going. And so the gap we have to jump over between success and significance is this big gaping void where we stop asking what might go wrong and we
Mm.
start asking who might it help.
Mhm.
That we make our survival, our stability, our security, our success, our significance about us. But truly, to make a significant impact in the world, we have to make it more about who does it help. And so you talk about this very similarly in a very parallel, but very different and interesting, unique way when you bring up the story of the Good Samaritan.
Mm.
We're going to get to the story of the Good Samaritan. First, you even talk about this idea of Paul with First Corinthians and how if we're not doing it with love, then we become this clanging gong or cymbal,
Mhm.
just sort of white noise, just
Mm.
more noise in the world. And I just want you to just kind of riff for a little while about maybe cases you've seen in your own life or just what you see in social media at large, the overnight success is rewarded, what have you, where, yeah, they're checking the boxes and yeah, they're doing the thing and yeah, they've made it all the way up to success. But that missing piece of love
Mhm.
means everything they're putting out there just feels like more noise.
Yeah, yeah. I love that in First Corinthians 13, and if you know the Bible, if you don't, it doesn't matter, but if you do know it, you can follow me either way. It's love is kind, love is patient, love is not self-serving. And we've heard that. It's been in our weddings. We've heard it at other weddings. And I love that it starts off with Paul saying, like, listen, before you even get to that, like if you speak like an angel, but you do it without love, then like it doesn't matter. It's a clanging gong. And I like to think out like a gong. I'm like, well, that doesn't really parallel to my world today. I don't have any gongs in my house. Although I will say my husband's old law firm used to have gongs for every case they settled for like I don't know, 10 million or above. They would have a gong or something crazy. But think some of you are too young to know this, but when I was little, my grandparents watched the Gong Show, and it was basically like the kissing cousin to like The Voice, basically. And they put up these like terrible talents, air quote, whether or not they were talented people, and they would get gonged off if they were terrible, if they were the worst like act, and they'd get a gong. And I think about that in this passage of the Bible, like anything we do without love, it probably gets a gong. It's just not worth much. And I think in my life, like, gosh, I kind of wish there was a gong around that I would just hear that gong in my head when I'm doing things that are without love. Like, like when I call over to a friend and I want to be like, oh, we need to pray for so and so, but we really just wanted to tell her the gossip. Like somebody gong that. Like that's not love. And when I volunteer to help and do something, but I'm only doing it because my kid needs service hours, like let's just gong that, because let's call it what it is. Are we doing things out of obligation? Are we doing them out of love? as a fellow podcaster, you can probably relate to this. And I talk about this in the book, How Did I Miss That? I talk about how I had this opportunity to podcast someone that's a very big author. Most of you would know this person. And I'm not going to obviously mention it, but it doesn't matter. But I was so excited, and I get to interview some really cool people, and you learn a lot in this process, right? Of interviewing people. But this
Oh,
particular person,
yes.
their platform is based on love and loving people well. And so I was so excited. And I mean, I memorized all this person's pets' names. And I mean, I was prepped. And we get to the moment of the interview. And of course, as only Murphy's Law could have it,
Yeah.
there's some technical difficulty, right? And
Yes.
so I'm on, and this person thinks they're on, but they're not. And so we don't link up. So I finally call the number. It's 20 minutes in probably. And I'm like, hey, so and so, I'm so sorry. We must be having a technical difficulty. And this person whose platform is based on love basically said to me, like, well, that's too bad. I'm never interviewing with you again. And let's not reschedule. And
Wow.
listen, everybody can have a bad day. I'm sure someone out there right now is telling a story when Cynthia Yanof was a jerk. Like, I don't hold that against them, but I will just say this. When you base your entire platform on love and you act unloving, it doesn't go unnoticed. And I
Mm.
think that's just something to think about, especially as Christians. Like, listen, if the platform's love and God's love, then when we're acting unloving, it matters. And so I would just say sometimes we get so caught up in what we do, like what we need to be doing, what's the next step. And I would say pause and consider how you do it, because I feel like how you do it, especially in faith, matters more than what you're doing at any given moment. And so that would be my challenge. As a girl, I mean, I literally just wrote a book, How Did I Miss That? With all the places that seemed obvious, like how did I actually miss that? And I would say that's one of those big areas in my life where I have I'm a motivated girl. I know you are too. I can get a lot done. And I realize like I got a lot done at the expense of doing it the right way.
Oof. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so that actually, like, let's just kinda tie these 2 trains of thought we've been having so far back together. That's the perfect segue there. Got a lot done without doing it the right way. Let's tie this idea of doing it without love and being this noisy, clanging gong back to the idea of the contracts exam of not asking the right questions. Riff for just a little while, deposition style. If you had to put words to it, especially like a generation coming up where all they've known is social media,
Mhm.
when they're everything is content, hashtag content, when they're creating the content, when they're going after the goals, trying to get the brand deal, whatever the case may be, just trying to get likes and followers. What do you think are the wrong questions that they're asking themselves, just like in like brain dump list off style, that absent this ingredient, this crucial ingredient of love, means they may accomplish some things, but it's going to be for the wrong reasons?
Yeah. I'd say two things. One, if your question is always how does this benefit me, my platform, my goals, you've missed it. Like really
Yeah.
at the end of the day, especially in a faith context, like the first are last and the last are first. We got to stop wondering how's it going to benefit me? Let's stop and pause and say, how's this going to benefit the person that needs the message that I have? And so I think it's so easy. I'm that way. So culturally, it's so acceptable to see, well, how's it going to help me? How am I going to get further up the ladder? Whatever. Well, let's stand down for a minute and say, how's this going to benefit someone else? But then the other thing I would say, especially in a social media world, and I have two kids. One just I mentioned one just graduated from college and is going to law school. One just started college, and then brace yourself, everybody. I have a third grader, so that's a whole journey. But I tell them all the time. One of the things that I've missed that I talk about in this book is that what seems most urgent in the moment is almost never what's urgent. And I
Mm.
say that, and the same thing can be said of social media or whatever you're doing to build your platform or your business. What seems urgent in the moment probably isn't. And for me, especially because I do things from a biblical perspective, to me, I've got to pivot from what's most urgent to what's most eternal. But what's going to last? What's going to matter? And I talk about this a lot in raising kids. I kind of laugh about my family's super sporty and I can barely walk. Like I'm the least athletic person you're ever going to have on this show. I promise you that. But I talk about how, my kids played sports, and my husband came to me. He played college baseball. He's super sporty. And he came to me like when our firstborn was like 6. And he's like, she's playing on this neighborhood team, and I just don't know that they're good enough. Softball, I think. And I think that, you know what? I think we should put her on a select team. And I was like, she's only 6. And he's like, yeah, the game is going to pass her by though. And he was serious, right? And that's how it
Wow.
is with all of our stuff. Like there always seems to be this urgency that we're going to miss it. It's going to pass us by. And now knowing what I know and raising a kid, like it really was never the big moments that were the big, it was the in between moments. It wasn't the big moment in the game. It wasn't being on the right team. It wasn't that she got to be the starting whatever in the big district game. You know what really mattered was how we talked about the kid who got her spot in the game and how we told her character counts twice. We care much more about your character than your abilities. It's all these in between moments. And so maybe you're raising kids, maybe you're not. Whatever you're doing, I would just say step back from it for a moment and realize that in the end, 20 years from now, is what's urgent still going to be urgent? And if you are a believer, if you have a faith, then I would also say this, like, is it eternal? Does it matter in the long run? And if not, let that be kind of a guiding principle.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that. And that leads me so nicely. I mentioned the Good Samaritan. I'm ready to come back around to that. You talk about this story in a really interesting way, um, different than I've heard anybody really talk about it, with talking about sort of this crosshair intersection between our outlook and our availability in terms of what makes a neighbor. So, for anybody who's not familiar with the story, just set up the story for us. And I especially loved when you talked about what the robbers valued, what the Levite and the priest valued, and what the Good Samaritan himself valued.
Right, right. So Jesus is telling this as a parable. And so Jesus is talking to a Jewish audience. And this Jewish audience, I mean, he's saying, I'm the Messiah. And this Jewish audience is like, I mean, they're asking a question without asking it. They're like, yeah, we kind of thought the Messiah was going to come as a king and he was going to be like on maybe a big white horse and triumphant. And you're kind of like a commoner and you've got these disciples that are like one offs. And so the elephant in the room is like, I don't know about that. And so Jesus is talking about all of this and it comes into what's the greatest commandment. And he says, like, love your neighbor. And someone says, like, who's your neighbor? And that's where this all comes in. And so he tells the story of the Good Samaritans. So you just kind of have to have a little perspective around Jesus' teachings. And he says, okay, well, there's a guy that's going from Jericho to Jerusalem and he gets beat up by a robber and left for dead. And he said he's laying there, and next a Levite comes by and a priest, and they both pass on the other side of the road because they got places to be and they keep going. But the Good Samaritan, and by the way, highly controversial because the Jewish people hated Samaritans. Okay. So Jesus, here he is, a Jew, making the Samaritan a hero. And he says, yeah, well, the Good Samaritan, he stopped and he took care of him and gave him a place to be and a place to be cared for. And the point of that is Jesus is saying, like, listen, we can look at people a lot of different ways. And by the way, there's a lot of points in the story, but I'm going to hit on the one that you liked that you were mentioning. But he's saying, like, listen, the robbers saw him as a weakness to be exploited, and the Levite and the priest saw him as an obstacle to be avoided. And the Good Samaritan, he saw him as a neighbor worth loving. And so we have the opportunity every day to have an outlook, and we can have an outlook that is marked with compassion and mercy and interruptibility and risk availability and intentional living. Like, you can have that and it will inform your actions. And you can also take the position that you are going to avoid people, that you are not going to step into the messy, that you are going to put number one first. And that's always me. Right. And so we have these opportunities and we've got to decide, like, that's just one of those moments. Like, you got to decide, who are you? What you going to be about? And at the end of the day, like, I don't want to be the Levite. I don't want to be the priest. It's easier. It would be nice. There's a million times where I'd like to step aside. I don't want to be the robber. I don't want to take advantage of people for what they have to offer me. I want to be the person that's willing to say, like, listen, if the call is to love my neighbor, then it will cost me something. And it will cost me time. It may cost me money. It may cost me platform. But at the end of the day, what am I going to be about? And I want to be about things that are significant, meaningful, and lasting, and it will come at a price, and the decision is ours, day in, day out, moment by moment.
Oof, that is so good. That is so good. What I wrote in my notes, and that was sort of just like a, light bulb moment for me, tying this back to the show up season, is like, you can show up and you can be doing the things. You can show up and you can be physically present. You can show up and even be on the right path, the right road, going where you're supposed to be going. But if you miss this part, if you miss the outlook, if you miss the availability, if you miss the love, You can be on the right path and still not be going anywhere. And man, that is really what this season's about, right? This episode in particular, this is going to be one of the earliest episodes that come out, and it's just getting our lens right, right? It's getting the filter through which we're looking, because you can. I know in personal one firsthand that when you grow up a certain way and you this sort of like survival mode, achieving is safety, switch gets flipped.
Mhm.
Um, that it can be really hard to turn that off, that the self-preservation can become selfishness.
Mm.
And what's in it for me, and how do I grow me, and how do I get me to more safety, and how do I get me to more gold stars because they feel like breathing. Achieving feels like oxygen,
100%.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Woo, that's good. So that leads me, this is a really good, sort of like, that's what not to do. So now we can really start to pivot into what to do. And I wrote in my notes this sort of idea. My friend Hannah Brencher calls this small things on repeat.
Mhm.
You talk about it in terms of mustard seeds of faith, and I just even riff for a little while. We sometimes on this show will have a Zach Morris TV timeout meta
Mm.
moment
Mhm.
where we talk about the craft of writing, or we talk about the craft of, um, what you're actually like, the sort of techniques you're using in the book.
Mhm.
And you talk about neural coupling and mirroring and the power of storytelling,
Mm.
and how visual storytelling actually takes retention of the listener from 10 to 20% up to 65%, that it's a
Mhm.
huge jump. And this is something that I talk about right off the bat in a speaker's course that I'm taking people through right now as a beta team. But what I would love to just camp out and talk about for a second is Jesus knowing that about how humans were wired and created, using it in his teaching generally, but especially going back to what you were just saying about how people expected Jesus to show up with trumpets and everything, in terms of this mustard seed metaphor. We know mustard seeds can move mountains. The faith of a mustard seed can move a mountain. We've heard that before. Most of us have. But there's just so much there to unpack that only I feel like a lawyer's brain could do.
Mhm.
And just really kind of like like all the different layers Jesus was actually teaching with just such a small story.
Yeah, yeah. And so I love that you're saying that. And here's the thing is like when I'm writing in this book, my hope is it's really funny that we can laugh, but also that like I can paint a picture for you and that like for me, I'll remember a story. I'm not going to remember if you tell me just straight up facts, which is kind of what that neurocoupling is. Like add a visual behind it. And so Jesus is the master of doing that. He's literally trying to explain in this mustard seed. It's mentioned many times in New Testament, but the one I'm referencing, he's basically saying, like, look around. And it kind of falls short on us because we don't have a lot of mustard seeds laying around, but he's like, look around, like this little seed, and there's probably like tiny mustard seeds all in the pathway. This little seed becomes this, and he's pointing to this huge landscape full of mustard plants, and the smallest seed becomes the largest plant. And so he's saying back to what I said earlier. He's saying, like, listen, you were expecting that the Messiah would come in this huge, trumpet fanfare. And I'm telling you, this is how the things of faith work. Small things become big things. And so that's what he's talking about. But let's break it down for us and how this works. I think I say at the beginning of my book that the quote that kind of drove the whole concept of the book is, and it's kind of an unknown person. I don't know who said it, the unknown quote, but that, people are basically the same, but it's a little difference that makes a big difference. And that was actually going to be the title of the book originally, is The Little Difference. And we changed it to How'd I Miss That? But this is how it works. This mustard seed mentality is what we need. The mustard seed mentality buys into the fact, especially in faith, but I believe in life that small things make a big difference. And that's not what you see culturally, especially with social media. Everything's got to be a big platform moment. And it's this huge, and even with our kids, or am I going to get an award for that? Can it be Instagrammable? Like all the things. And in the kingdom of God, is saying like these little mustard seeds, they have produced this entire huge mountain of the largest plants. And so we have to believe that the small things we do, they matter, they're significant. That's kind of having this mustard seed mentality. But you've probably heard this, guys, but you think about bamboo. And bamboo, you plant a little seed and you water it, and then the sun shines, and you wait and you wait and you wait. And with a bamboo seed, it can be up to a couple of years before there's any growth. Now, I need y'all to know I would have given up about 2 weeks in, because
Yeah.
if you're not going to grow, I'm not going to water you. I have no time for you. That's my natural Cynthia self. But here's the thing, once it does sprout with a couple years later, it can grow up to several feet in one day.
Wild.
And so the entire time you're waiting, when you're seeing nothing, there's a deep root system that's forming underneath. And what I want us to think about is that is the case in faith, especially. Like you can water something and do the faithful thing over and over and over and never see the sprout, or maybe not for years. But it still matters because we can trust the God of the universe who created and authored all things can find a way to be doing he's growing this deep root system that's going to matter. And when there is growth, it will be significant and substantial. I tell the story, and I'll be brief, but about my friend that our very best friends years and years ago, the husband got involved in white collar crime and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Shocking. Like
Hmm.
last people in the world we thought this would have happened to. And a wife had no idea. They have young kids, like life's falling apart. And I asked some people at our church to pray about it. And this woman I didn't really know, Peggy Powell's her name. Peggy Powell gets wind of this. And she starts writing him a letter every day. Now I find out like 2 years later, I'm like, what? And so I call her, I'm like, you've been writing him a letter every day? And I said, why? Like, what would promote that? What would make you want to do that for someone you don't know? Never lived in the same city with him. He's in prison in a different state. She said two things. Practically, I know that prisoners who get mail are treated better. Second
Yeah.
of all, I wanted him to know that his best days are ahead, that there's no
Mm.
condemnation in Christ. Now, listen, I tell you the story because Peggy Powell understood the mustard seed philosophy. She understood something as small as a stamp and a pen, and writing a letter every single day to someone was a difference maker. And the thing is, they started memorizing scripture together. He would write her back all the things he was memorizing. And he says today, he's out of prison. She's the reason, her praying over him and believing in him is the reason his family is still together. And I believe that there will be generations that will be changed because of the impact of a woman who was willing to do something small and insignificant that had huge long term effect. And so think of Peggy Powell. I mean, I could just, you and I could say, Mary, like, do the things that don't seem to matter, keep watering the seed, and you're not going to remember that. But then I want
Right.
to think, like, every time you see a stamp, I mean, I don't know who sends a letter anymore, but you see a stamp or you hear the name Peggy, you think, yeah, man, I'm going to buy into the fact that the things that are seemingly insignificant matter.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good. I was just thinking about when you said who sends letters, like, aren't stamps up to like 75 cents or something? Like they're or 79. I don't know. They're up.
Well, now I'm looking at my
And
desk, but I think so. Yeah.
and so like that's a time commitment, that's a consistency habit commitment, it's a financial commitment to pour into somebody's life like that. That's really incredible. You talked about the bamboo, and I was just on someone's podcast right before this, doing an interview, and I was quoting you, talking
Oh,
about the bamboo, this idea of like, up to 5 years of no results, and I'm with you. I would have been like out 2 weeks, like,
out,
forget it. It's never
out.
gonna happen. And the root system is this intricate, deep, interwoven root system is being laid, no evidence of it at all on the surface. But if that groundwork hadn't been laid, the blessing would have broken us. The
Mm.
blessing of that kind of growth, 2 feet a day, what we would have crumbled under that. And I mean,
That's beautiful. And don't you
that's
see that all the time in Hollywood? Don't you see it all the time with
yes.
musicians, people that were like nothing and then they get discovered and all of a sudden, I mean, they're crumbling under their own success. And I
Yeah.
mean, nobody needs that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Okay. So, building off the mustard seed, you talk about small seeds of faith sown daily that are so easy to miss and feel like nothing in the moment have the capacity through Jesus to be profound. Tiny seeds with great potential. With Jesus, even the smallest acts of faithfulness have the potential for extraordinary growth. In other words, the daily, seemingly insignificant steps of faith accumulate over time in ways we cannot begin to grasp, unseen, yet unimaginably powerful. And you go on to say, it's not the size of the seeds that's the difference maker, but the one who makes it grow.
Mm.
And I love that with my whole heart. And also, I want to just camp here in the Mary's wants to throw a temper tantrum, frustration
Mhm.
of like, there is, even though that is the truth, there's this tension there of like or like it feels unfair when
Mhm.
we look out at the world and we think it should be the one who planted the most seeds or the biggest seeds or who
Mhm.
was out there faithfully sowing and tending and pruning the seeds. And sometimes that's just not how it works in the world. That sometimes I think there's a scripture that says, like I alone will decide who to promote.
Mhm.
And I just want you to, riff on that maybe in your own experience, your own life, where it feels like, but I'm doing the things I should be doing.
Mhm.
I'm being a good steward. I'm,
Yeah.
looking out over my fields, whatever. I'm looking out over my flock. And there's a big part of me, especially the Appalachian child of the 80s, Enneagram 4 part of me that really struggles with this idea of I can't force it into fruition. I don't like needing to ask for help, including from God. And so maybe just riff for a little while about that idea of like, even though what we're saying is you got to plant the seeds, you got to plant the seeds. Even if you do that, it's still up to God to decide which seeds are going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And how fast they're going to grow. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's Mark Batterson, one of my favorite authors too. He says, like, we want things to happen a second and they really happen at the speed of a seed, right? Slow, right? That's what we want. I mean, I would say this. You have to figure out, like, how are you going to define success? I mean, what is your definition of success at the end of the day? And I will say, like, if you've sent a kid to college recently or you've gone to college recently, you know this. You know that you have to have a college resume. And on that college resume, you can't be all naive and be like, oh, I'm a math and science girl. No, you're not. You better be an everything girl. You better be good at every subject and you better speak a different language and play the cello and be captain of the team. Like, you got to be all the things. And I'm just going to say to you, like, I was not all those things. Were you guys? Like, my parents apparently fell asleep at the wheel. Like, they were so comfortable in my mediocrity. It's ridiculous. Like, nobody was like, send Cynthia to Kumon or tutoring or whatever to get her. Nobody cared. Like, they were like, go play and we'll see you in a few hours. But here's the thing I would say, we are in a culture where success is defined by what's measurable, right? How fast can you run around the track? How high is your ACT grade? Your score? How much business do you have? How much money's in your bank account? Your 401? Measurable things. At the end of the day, is that how you want to define success? Because in my life, I think many of the most important things, definitely the most God honoring things I can do on any given day, are not measurable. And they are not measurable because, like, with me, if I take time and slow down and spend some time with someone who needs it, or I do something kind for my parents who need it at this point in life, or I'm parenting a kid that I just need to be present, like, I'm doing things every single day that are not measurable. And just because it's not measurable does not mean it doesn't count. And so I think you've got to redefine success. And if you're thinking success is only when we hit this certain number or whatever that measurable thing is, you will be frustrated. But if you redefine your success in smaller increments and say, you know what, like, I didn't add to the financial bottom line today, but you know what? I did something really great for this person, or I promoted someone that they can do nothing for me. Like, if you can start redefining success, because I can promise you this, I was just on the phone with a friend. I'm going to totally botch this, but she basically said she's reading some book from a palliative care person or what, however you say that. And it was like, who are the people that are not living in regret at the end of their life? And they said people, three things: they have a faith, they have deep connection and friendship, and they have humor in their lives. None of that is measurable. And the end of your life will come. And now I'm closer to it than probably most of you, but the end will come. And if your definition of success is only on what's measurable, then you will live frustrated most of the time. And it will never be enough. Whatever it is today that you're like, if I could just whatever, it's never going to be enough. But at the end of days, of the end of your days, if you can redefine success along the way to things that are not measurable, which is very countercultural, you will have peace both today and I believe at the end. And so I just encourage you, as I think we chase after our dreams, man. I'm a girl that likes to go and get her done. But I also do that with a pivot that, listen, what really matters. I've lived long enough to know that what seems most urgent, back to what we said, what seems most urgent at the moment isn't. And I'm not going to live by a success definition that has to be measurable, that has to be Instagrammable, that has to add to the bottom line, because I don't think it's going to matter in the long run.
Yeah, gosh, I love all of that so much. And the thing that was coming to mind as you were talking, I had this like in my notes later on, but I think right now is the perfect time to talk about it. Is as we're recording this, the Golden Globes happened not too long ago, and for anybody who missed them or didn't see it on social media afterwards, Julia Roberts. This was not when it was like during her award category. She did not win her award category. So this was not like an acceptance speech. She was coming out to present. And she got this sort of standing ovation that just like began as like one table and then like rippled through the whole room. And, she's in her very Julia Roberts way, sort of plays it off and is very sweet about it. But after that, my husband and Justin and I spent a lot of time going, hey, like, what do we think contributed to this reaction, this standing ovation for somebody who was just coming out to present an award? It wasn't like even like a lifetime achievement award or anything like
Mhm.
that. And we, hypothesized longevity of career, the culmination of a body of work, past awards she's won as an Oscar winner, just being America's sweetheart, girl next door
Mhm.
kind of personality. But a couple days later, I think I got my answer because there was this video behind the scenes. This was before the award show even started. Everybody sort of like crammed down this hallway to try to make their way to the red carpet steps. And somebody filmed this video without them knowing it of Julia Roberts off in the corner, sort of huddling with Tiana Taylor, who did win for Best Supporting Actress that night. And you can just tell from the body language, you can't hear what they're saying, but you can just tell that she is like speaking life into her. She's like
Mhm.
holding her eye contact, telling her what her work means, telling her what her work means had meant to her, that you got it, kid, or I don't know what she
Yeah.
said, of course. But she's speaking life to the point that Tiana has her back to the camera, but you can see her start to wipe tears that she's crying and they're laughing together. And it was just like such a life-giving moment. And I said, oh, that's it. This is someone who's probably spent a lifetime having quiet moments that were never meant to be seen by the world, just speaking life into their fellow actors, their peers, people in the industry. I don't know that to be true. I only have one instance on camera, but I just don't think you do that 25, 30 years into your career one off,
Agreed.
And so if you watch when Tiana wins the award, she is making her way to the stage and she makes a beeline to Julia Roberts and they have another moment there. And that's, Tiana has her own story of, a lifetime of putting in seeds and small things on repeat. But I just thought that was like such a beautiful example of everything you're talking about of like, you can have the awards, you can be America's sweetheart, you can be well loved with your public persona. But it's what you do when the camera's not looking,
Yeah. Well,
that adds up.
That's so good. Like, I'm gonna need to steal that for my next interview. That was beautiful. But but honestly, is that not kind of back to the Good Samaritan? Like, what's your perspective? Like, you have the opportunity to walk past the competition. You have the opportunity to talk bad about the competition. You can, whatever the things are, she chose to speak into it and to step into something she didn't have to, wasn't required. And I mean, that's the Good Samaritan. I mean, that's if you have an outlook that's marked by the things that are significant, that are eternal, you will live differently and it will not go unnoticed. And so, if you are willing to risk take, if you're willing to slow down, if you're willing to love people well, we talked about that. It's not always what you do, it's how you do it. And I think that's a Julia Roberts. And I think it kind of ties, like you said, back to what we said in The Good Samaritan. What's your outlook? And when you have an outlook that has a bigger picture, then it will inform your days and your actions and how you act in any given moment. I think it's awesome. She's the best. She also said, did you read somewhere where she said she wouldn't do Pretty Woman today? Like she's lived enough life.
Oh,
I don't
really?
remember the exact quote. I'll butcher it, but basically, like I've lived enough life and know enough now that I don't think I could do that part again. I was like, oh,
Hmm.
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That whole, story also reminds me of something that you shared in the book about Hoda and
Mhm.
what Craig, who replaced her, said about her when she retired, which is like when the red light goes off, you're the same person, right? And just like you're the same one on the stage as you are on the podcast, as you are in the grocery store, basically, kind of idea. And there's this marketing theory in the E-Myth, the E-Myth, Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It, that talks about how negative word of mouth is so much more powerful. It's either the E-Myth or Creating Customer Evangelists. It's one of those 2 books.
Okay.
And it's that negative word of mouth is so much more powerful than, positive word of mouth. If I say, "Oh, you gotta check out this restaurant, it's so great." Okay, I'm not gonna remember that. But if I say, I got, pie from this restaurant and there was, like, a baby mouse in it,
Yeah.
then you're gonna be like, tell me that restaurant, I do not wanna
Mhm.
go there." But it said, like, the only thing more powerful than negative word of mouth is a negative experience made right. And
Mm.
so, you talk about, like, Katy Perry sending the olive branch, "My bad," "My
Mhm.
bad" to Taylor Swift. So all of that to just sort of say, like, everything like, the running theme is, like, we think it's about the public perception. We think it's about the number of likes, the number of followers, the platforms, but really it's about all of those moments that add up when we think nobody's looking.
Yeah.
And those, small things on repeat, these seeds that add up.
Such
So
a
that
good
kind of
word. Yeah.
that brings me to sort of like this in the meantime
Mhm.
part. We talked about, both of us said, like with the bamboo, we would have been like, forget it, I'm out.
Mhm.
And there's a metaphor and a pretty hilarious story, which I'm super ready for you to share, about waiting in the book. And um, in that story, you also reference a scripture that basically kind of talks about, like, go set a watchtower, like go up on a high place and watch and wait to see what the Lord does. And so set that story up for us, but I want you to do it through the filter of like the balance of waiting and watching to see what God does, and like a watch pot doesn't boil, that we can actually suck the joy out of it by being like, I'm looking for these seeds to sprout and they still aren't doing anything. So how do we watch and wait without ruining the wait?
Yeah, I mean, well, in the book, I'm talking about Habakkuk in the Old Testament and just how he's waiting for God to save his country, and the answer God's giving is He's going to use the most unpredictable, unresourceful way. And Habakkuk's just basically mad about it. And he's like, you know what? I've had it. So he goes and stands on a rampart and waits on God. And the rampart doesn't make sense to us, but basically he went to the highest place he could and he's just going to wait on God. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a word in there for us because listen, I get frustrated. I get tired of waiting. I'm not a good waiter at all. But I also know that I see things in the finite time and space and God does not. And so I think going to the rampart, going to a higher place, I kind of tell this story. I don't know if it's at this part in the book or later, but I talk about how back in my lawyer days, one day I was running late for work and I was in the parking garage. I was on the phone. I was put out with my job. Nothing, I didn't feel like my career was advancing. I was just over the whole thing. And so I am driving in the parking garage and I'm talking on the phone and I'm holding a Diet Coke because I'm always holding a Diet Coke. And I'm always parked on P2. P2 is full. I was late to work, zooming up the ramp, and all of a sudden my car comes to this screeching halt. And I mean, like out of there, I'm like, oh my gosh. And my Diet Coke goes flying and I see sparks flying. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it stops, the car stops, and I'm like checking to see if my body parts are intact. I'm like, what just happened in this parking garage? Well, it turns out now I know that the clearance on P2 is a lot higher than the clearance on P7 where I was, and literally my SUV was lodged in the parking garage between the ramp and the roof. Like horrifying, you guys. And so the parking lot attendants come and they're kind of laughing, but they're nice enough and they're like, "Let us figure this out." And so they are. And so I wait and wait. And finally after like 50 minutes, I'm like, "What is possibly taking you so long?" And they said, well, and you guys, as if it wasn't already horrifying enough, they said they had to call in a structural engineer because apparently when you lodge your car into a building like that, a basement parking garage, you become a load bearing wall. Who knew? And they couldn't remove my car until they knew. And I talk about this a lot because I feel like that was a season where the Lord was starting to tell me it's time to wait. I thought the most important work was happening on the 45th floor. I was late. I had to get to the 45th floor. And the Lord was saying, like, I'm going to do some basement level work on you. And that was a season in my life where it was a call to slow down and to realize that maybe the 45th floor isn't all that I thought the 45th floor was going to be. It's funny. They did get the car out at some point and they called over this guy, Manny. Structural engineer cleared it. They called this guy Manny and they said, Manny, hey, can you do your job? And I thought Manny would show up with heavy equipment or something to get this car out. No, they let the tire out of the air out of the tires. They took the little things off the tires. And then Manny, literally, his job was to jump on the running board up and down because Manny was a very large man, really large man. And so he was jumping up and down on the side of my car and not let the air out faster and I could get my car out. And I kind of say this when I speak to groups sometimes that like, I don't want to liken myself to the fat guy jumping on your SUV, but let me be that for a minute and just say like, listen, like sometimes there is a call to wait and there's a call to slow down. And what you think is just impacting you in that moment, I was like, oh, who cares? It's just a parking garage embarrassing moment. But it had the capacity to impact an entire building. And the same thing happens with us. Like, listen, these basement level moments matter because they impact the structural integrity of your entire life, of your business, of how you do things. So if I could encourage you in the weight, I feel like there is valuable things going on. Root system, like we talked about earlier. And so I would embrace that weight a little bit and trust, especially, man, if you're relying on the Lord, trust that there is a moment in time where He's probably going to say, slow it down. And we're going to do this on a different time frame. And in that moment, like lean into that weight. And I will say that was the beginning of a season for me where it changed everything. I stopped practicing law, changed direction, redefined success. Left most, I mean, I made good money in the day. Don't now. No, ma'am. You don't make good money authoring and podcasting by and large, people. But I wouldn't change anything. And so in the weight is where there's pivots in the definitions of success. There's pivots in what you value. There's pivots in how you approach life. And I think higher ground matters. Habakkuk went to higher ground. He was lost in the perspective and mad at what God was doing. I was stuck in a basement, but you know what? I wasn't actually stuck. I was stuck on the 45th floor where I had no perspective. And the Lord's like,
Wow.
nope, we're going to do some basement work. So I hope that
Wow.
resonates with you. I hope you follow me and just saying that it is frustrating. And I like to get things done. I'm an accomplisher. But just because it's not following the path that I thought it was going to follow doesn't mean there's not valuable contribution, significance going on in that way. It's just lean into it a little bit.
Gosh, I love that so much, and I'm so glad you tied that back to the root system, right? It's,
Yeah.
like, exactly that same idea, like, "Oh, we gotta make sure this isn't actually a load-bearing wall here," you know, that, like, the whole building isn't gonna come down because the foundation has been compromised. And what really comes up for me there, what I really, felt like sort of like a pinch in my heart about is when you're in that moment being held in a really exposed place and people are gathering around to look and watch and see the progress. And, you have that like, what could possibly be taking so long instinct is that it feels embarrassing. It
Mhm.
feels shame-filled when you
Yeah.
feel like this should be done already. What are we possibly waiting for? That we should be out of this mess we've gotten ourselves in faster or whatever the case may be. And we have no idea what we're being protected from because it takes longer first. We have no idea how close we were to danger if we would have tried to rush that process. So, kind of to start to like wrap us up a little bit, that feeling there that I was
Mhm.
just describing really pivots really nicely into this next part where there's a moment in the book where you're describing one of your sons having trouble with football and one of your sons having trouble with school. And there's a moment where you go on page 49, basically like, and then everything completely worked out. He went on to like get a name and likeness deal that, retired us and the other
Yeah.
kids in the gifted program and
Mhm.
everything like just a little bit of fast forward in the story and everything worked out so much better than we could have ever imagined. And then you go, gosh, wouldn't that be amazing? And it actually hasn't been resolved the way that you hoped. And that you got me. I'm not gonna lie, you got me. I was like, "Oh, wow." Like, I'm like, "Oh, who does he play for? Like, what is the name and likeness deal?" You know? And I think it really exposed in me a preference and I don't understand the world unless the underdog gets everything they ever wanted.
Mhm.
And in a 3-minute montage where we skip to the good part. And something I've been noticing a lot lately, I'm a huge movie fan, big cinephile. We go every week, pretty much on Tuesdays for Half Price Day. Um, and there has been a real long streak of movies coming out that I've been kind of complaining to Justin about are like futility movies. Like they don't actually get everything they wanted in the end. Song Sung Blue, they get really close and then he dies. Spoiler alert. And Marty Supreme, like the whole movie is about getting to this competition and he doesn't get to go and like whatever. There's some serious spoiler alerts happening here, people. Sorry about that. But like it kind of occurred to me reading that part in your book, maybe the world does need more stories where it doesn't immediately work out.
Yeah.
And we don't immediately skip to the good part, and we don't immediately get everything we ever wanted. Underdog movies teach us to have hope and be inspired and go for the big dreams, but I think these movies instill in us something different. And so just riff for a little while on what stories like this, when we're neural coupling with stories like this,
Mhm.
what do they build in us that underdog movies getting everything they ever wanted can't?
Yeah. Protection feels like punishment a lot of times. I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
reality of it. I mean, I feel like that my little one, we adopted a little one from foster care, and he's a fireball, and his college sister. Well, let me back it up and say the other night he went up to bed, and I said, "Do not get out of bed." And he 5 minutes later, I hear him screaming and crying, and I go up there, I'm like, "Dude, what?" And he's like, "The peppermint, the peppermint." I'm like, "The peppermint? What are you talking about?" And he's got a washcloth in his mouth, and he's like, "The peppermint." And I'm like, "Go show me." He's like, "No, I'm going to get in trouble," because he got out of bed. I'm like, "Well, you're already in trouble. Show me, bro." And we go in, and he opens his sister's room, the drawer in her room, and it was pepper spray. And he had sprayed it like peppermint in his mouth, like
Oh,
mouth
no.
spray. Well, by the time I realized that, I'm already in there, right? And so I'm breathing, I'm coughing, choking, my mouth's on fire. So I'm like, "What have you done?" And so his dad, my husband's like, what are y'all yelling about? We're not yelling people typically. And I'm like, he maced the second floor of our house. And so we get him down and we're washing it off of him, and he's crying. And now, by the way, if you're a parent, you'll appreciate this. First child, I would have taken you to the emergency room. Second child, I would have at least called poison control. Third child, I'm like, "Don't you ever get out of bed again." But I say this because his sister said, "Don't touch it. It's pepper spray." And when you tell a little kid, "Don't touch it, it's dangerous," or, whatever, he thought it must be good stuff. She doesn't want me
Right.
to have it. And I think that's how it works. That was a moment of protect. Now, why is it not with her in college? Can we talk about that? I mean, my God, why is it in Dallas and you're not in Dallas, girl? But I say this to encourage you because in the moment, he felt like he was being kept from the good thing and he was going to find a way to get to it, whatever the cost. And the cost was big. He was miserable. He was sick. I got sick. My husband was vomiting, and still to this day, when you go up to her room, if you touch certain things, there's still residue on it and you will start coughing. But what felt like punishment to him was protection and provision. And it's the same thing, you guys. We're the little kid. Like, "Oh, don't tell me I can't have that platform. Don't tell me I can't have the what." You know what I mean? And we're willing to go to any cost sometimes to chase after something that absolutely is worst case scenario for us. We just can't see it in the moment. And so I would say I want to encourage you that I know it's hard and I know there's places where you're like, "This doesn't make sense." The underdog, the under I mean, are we the underdog? I don't know. Most of us live in this country where we could live anywhere else. If you live in the United States and you are able to listen to this, like, we're not the underdog, but we convince ourselves we are at the end of the day. And I would just say this, like, JB needed to wait it out. My little one, he needed to wait it out and trust her. And there's some things you need to wait out. You need to trust the process. And it's frustrating and it's hard, but it comes at a huge expense if you don't. And so I just want to encourage you that. And you asked about my other son, and I'll just liken it to that too. Real briefly, he had learning disabilities, and I prayed and prayed and prayed and begged God to take away the learning disabilities, and he didn't. And that kid struggled all the way through school. And you know what I know now? He
Mm.
couldn't read forever. He's in college now and he can read to everyone, so that's good. Very thing I tried to pray out of his life, I would have given anything to take it away, was the very thing God used to make him who he is now. He is kind, he is compassionate, he is hardworking. Do you know why he's hardworking? Because he's always had to work hard because school is hard for him. And it's turning him into a man that is empathetic and is kind, maybe a good Samaritan if all goes well, right? Like he has a different outlook because of the hard, because of the struggle. And it wasn't fixed, to your point in the book. I wish I could tell you it was fixed. I mean, he still struggles. But listen, on the other side of the struggle, he is the man that he is supposed to be. And I wouldn't change it. And thank goodness the Lord didn't listen to me and answer the prayer trying to pray it out of him, man. I'm thankful for the struggle. So I'm with you guys. I know it's hard. I know it's frustrating, but don't chase after things like my little one that are harmful, that we don't even know in the moment. And also, man, the struggle produces a different kind of grit and a different kind of opportunity. And I wouldn't change it.
Love that. You say in the book, one day when we're old and gray, we'll look back and realize that the moment by moment decisions of figuring out what really matters were the little difference that make a big difference. Cynthia, let them know where they can find you, where they can find this book, follow you, get more stuff from you. Are there any bonuses they should know about? This will come out 1 week before the book comes out, so just let them know all the things.
Absolutely. If you will go to CynthiaYanof.com, you can get all the first chapter and the Audible and all kinds of things for the book. But yes, the book is How'd I Miss That? My last name's Yanof. It's a weird one, Yanof. How'd I miss that? It's all the places, Amazon, all the places. My website, CynthiaYanof.com. That'll point you to podcasts. And here's the other thing I'd say, like, I'm on social media under Cynthia Yanof. If I can encourage you, if I can pray for you, I'm here for that. DM me. I'd love to. Like, I'm just one of you guys. We're all just trying to figure it out day by day. So, and Mary, thanks for being so gracious and generous to have me on. Big fan.
Thanks. Oh, thank you so much. And I am super excited. We get to flip the microphone here in a couple weeks and
You're going to be
turn
on
the
mine.
tables.
Yes.
And I'll be on your show. Yeah, I love it. All right, friends, the book is How'd I Miss That? Gas Pump Confessions, Drive-Through Obsessions, and Figuring Out What Really Matters. It is out everywhere books are sold February 3rd, but get those pre-orders in now. And for now, I'll just leave you with these words from Cynthia. God is the ultimate renamer. He's constantly taking our perceived failures and naming them a success for kingdom purposes. He's calling us out of our shame, out of our disappointments. He's applauding every ounce of our effort because He alone orchestrates our future, and He brings hope even when our dreams feel benched. Until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your Show Up season.